all these come together, and we can analyze that data, we can access that data. Some of it's open source, so typically ESA data, European Space Agency data, is readily available. Some of it from, say, NASA, a little bit grey at the minute as to whether it's completely free. But yeah, so these are all these data sets. So these are some of what we started playing with. And the big thing that really started interesting me, or was, that like I say, as I started to look at it, I realised that the Earth observation data market in the UK was massively growing. There's a lot of government investment going into this. So it kind of piqued my interest that there was obviously a reason why this was a growing sector. So, you know, at the minute we're looking at, last year we were looking at about $1.13 billion, and we're now looking at $2 billion in 2030. So this is a real growing area. And what I wanted to do was talk you through some of the use cases that are already out there, and then the particular one that I've kind of settled into. I found that obviously where climate change is concerned, that's one of the big areas. Probably all aware of the recent fires on the moors. It's obviously been, this is not normal Manchester weather, let's be honest. So there's a lot of, that's one of the key drivers here. So the UK government is also funding putting in policy for climate mitigation, which uses Earth observation data. And the other thing is that the technology is much more able to provide the information that we need, that we can utilize. Going back to those dot-com boom days, we were ahead of our time with that with systems we were doing. Some of you remember there was what we called an ADSL rollout, broadband. Not everybody had it, and that ultimately undermined our company. With Earth observation right now, we are seeing more and more of the data actually available that we need. So, you've got some percentages here, which are, the biggest one at the bottom there is the agriculture. So it's a percentage of that market. So part of my journey, part of how I've got into this industry is I've looked at something I was already doing and thought, how can I use Earth observation data with that? So if, for example, if you've got any agriculture links, 25% or 24% of that spend is in agriculture. It's absolutely huge. Climate monitoring is 19.8%. Disaster management, so looking at the fires, that's 17.2%. Urban planning, 15.9%. So we used to use footfall cameras for detecting where traffic flows were happening. Now you can do these sorts of things with satellites. Forestry is 13.4%. This was one I was very interested in initially, because the EU, there's an EU deforestation regulations, and one of the big use cases for Earth observation data is to check that if someone says they're planting trees and not cutting down trees, it's a way of mass monitoring that. And then the last number there is the defence and intelligence, which is 7.8%. So a couple more data sources here, which are, so in addition to the classic sort of, yes, these are just images you can use, but there are, one of the issues when you're using an image is you might have some cloud, and that would block your image. So whilst the satellites go over our heads every couple of days taking an image, it might be that it's blocked by cloud, and so you can't really use it. But then there's other data sources. So for example, the synthetic aperture radar that use microwaves that can see through that. That also allows you to provide other data aspects and other things that you can measure. And then we also have hyperspectral. So these are this is really good for detecting chemicals. So some of the images you can see are of cities, what gases and the flows across South America, for example, where different gases are going. So where the CO2 is, where the nitrous oxide is. So you can detect that information. And then just a bit about the different types of satellites. So depending upon the height of the satellite that you're using, because you've got low Earth orbit, medium, and geostationary, that can provide different resolutions and different aspects of angles. One of the things with the images sometimes is and why sometimes drone imagery doesn't work is when you're taking the drone imagery, the Earth is, believe it or not, the Earth is curved, despite what some people would have you believe, and it doesn't go on the back of turtles either, for those of you. But the Earth is curved, so when a drone takes an image, there is curvature of the Earth that it has issues with angles. The higher up the satellite, the less that imagery less that becomes a problem. And that's why we need to use variety of sources. There are, I alluded to earlier, there are various suppliers of data out there, some of whom charge you for the data, some of whom it's free. So ESA data, generally free. And if you go and look at their sites, they tend to do presentations where they'll get you using a little Jupyter notebook, that even the processing of that data is free. So it's a great way to get involved with that. But if you really want ultimately the right sort of resolution of data, so the really accurate data, you need to start looking at paying for some of it. So you've got Airbus, Planet Labs, for example, and some of these other suppliers. And then there's aggregator platforms, so they bring the data together and provide you with some other indexes. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay, so like I say, all of this data, though, can be used by different ways by these different industries. So agriculture, disaster management, urban planning, defence, health, and you may find another case for it as well. So yeah, agriculture, here's some of the use cases within agriculture that there are. Vegetation health. So the satellites constantly take images. Those images, then you can look at the color of the trees, or the plants. That can tell you how healthy it is. So if you've got huge amounts of fields, rather than have to constantly go out and look at it, you can detect how healthy is that plant by comparing. Here's what it looked like a few weeks ago. Here's what it's looking like now. You know, I don't think this has impacted so much in Manchester, but if you go, I was hearing from someone the other day that they'd gone down to Birmingham and how brown everything is right now because of the lack of rain that we've been having. Okay, we can all see that around us, but the satellite can detect that on a massive scale and monitor it for you. And that is absolutely vital for agriculture. And if you want to get into the sector, a way in which you can get paid is by talking to insurers, because they need to know what's going on. Yeah, disaster management. So one of the, as part of my journey, one of the things I've seen is in the last year, there's government putting a lot of money into wildfire detection. Now, okay, probably some of us have experienced, you know, the smoke that's been going on from Dovestones, etc. fires. There are Earth observation instances where they're trying to use funding or to look at the Earth observation data to look at where the wildfires are happening and try and predict those. The damage caused by a wildfire is huge. It takes 10 years on average for one of those wildfires on the moors to repair. And the moors are, I do lots of walking, and some of those sites, there's ground nesting birds. Those are the only nesting sites those birds have. If that site effectively gets destroyed for the next 10 years, then that can lead to that species becoming extinct. Urban planning, yeah, so looking at property values, land use change, or unauthorized development is an interesting one that, again, you can see, oh, look, someone's building something there. Maybe, okay, UK slightly different, but in some parts of the world, people will literally start building. I've actually got one just around the corner from me where someone seems to have grabbed some land and has started building on it. Now, okay, I know about that and I've seen the council, but you can detect that from the changes in the images. And defence. The defence it's the smallest share of the market, but it's a very valuable one. Some of you may have heard with what's going on in Iran at the moment. Planet.com pulled their imagery or started delaying their imagery because people were actually going on their Earth observation data and trying to find out what was really going on. Were the Americans telling us the truth about what they were actually doing on the ground? So, and then final sort of sector is health. They're using similar data, and what they can do with some of the health is they can try and detect, by looking at the conditions of the ground, you can detect the chances of an outbreak starting. And you can also detect where populations of animals are migrating across from. This is actually causing some problems in the States at the minute, where there's a dysentery bug going around, and that's the Americans pulled the monitoring of that recently as part of Elon Musk's efforts. They pulled the monitoring of that, and that has led to a widespread bug going on in the States at the minute. Earth observation data can also be used to track the animals moving around that can cause that. Okay, so final bit is on the different sectors. Basically, all that data, you can just think about, how could I use that? How could I use map data, GIS data? How could I use that for the industry I'm working in? There are lots and lots of use cases there. So, and then the particular one that I've got involved with this last year is, this goes because one of my customers work in this area already, and it just made sense to kind of try and exploit that little gap, if you like. In the UK, we have something called biodiversity net gain legislation. This is literally within the last, I think it got ratified only a few months ago. If you're doing any kind of property development in the UK of a certain size, you have to demonstrate as a property developer a 10% biodiversity net gain. So if you think about it, if you're building somewhere, that's going to decrease the net diversity of that area. And then you have to then go and find somewhere that increases, or you have to go and find somewhere that's willing to increase the biodiversity of their area, and to do that by 10% more than you're losing. So, and these are 30-year projects that you actually have to demonstrate this gain over. And that's what my customers do, is they go and do these on-site surveys. Now, the rules are, it's always going to have to be done on the ground. What we found is that with satellite data, we can speed up the process, and we can help automate things. I'm going to talk about some of that in a minute. But yeah, so, but these surveys are quite expensive, and there is a limited number of ecologists out there that can actually do them. So one of the tools that we've done is by taking an image of a satellite, or a satellite image, they have to identify with these the different sections and what each habitat is going to be. At the moment, somebody has to manually trace over a map to do all the polygons. So with satellite imagery, we were able to get a satellite image of that area. I took the high-res aerial image, used AI algorithms to detect all the different sections, so by detecting the changes in color, and then to then convert it into polygons. And then you can then, further than that, because of the color, you can then detect what kind of habitat it's likely to be. So it's industrial buildings, is it housing, is it a motorway, is it a water course, etc. And that, for example, is a use case. It would take them one image would take them about 2 hours to do these polygons, and this algorithm will do it in 2 minutes. So you start to see the economic drivers of how you could increase things. And we also then think, okay, so that's just from images, but let's try and pull in other data sources. So vegetation health, you've got the canopy, you've got the ground exposure, water and wetland. So water is particularly useful for biodiversity net gain, where the species live. Early stress. So what you're able to do that, again, like I said, at the moment with the lack of rain that we're getting, we're going to see more and more of the crops around really struggling this year. And you'll start to hear in the news about harvests struggling. If you can detect that earlier and think, right, where we're best placed to put our water and resources, then we can try and mitigate against that. And then there's change over time. So this is just for those, well, you probably won't recognize it. This is just off the M66. So this is one of what we've done with the satellite imagery. We've written the algorithm that's turned that all into all the different polygons, colored for what the different land use is. Yeah. And one of the key drivers with the fact we're using Earth observation data, again, satellites go over our heads every couple of days. We can monitor this. If the ecologist goes and does a survey, they're just looking at one particular day. At the moment, we're not quite in drought, but we're on the cusp of it. So they might look at something and think that's not sufficient water for that to be relevant for a species. But we can aggregate those images based on many, many points of time to say, actually, here's your typical conditions. And those are some of the things that we're looking to do with that. So Yeah. So, and that's ultimately where we've got to with this journey now, is that we've actually found kind of, it's a little bit niche, arguably, biodiversity net gain, but it's a brand new market, and we're managing to look at that and think, how can we exploit that? Can we use that market? Can we get into that market? Can we automate things? And that's where we ended up with. And just by getting yourself out there, as a result of, I think it was Adam got me to come along to, was it the Northwest Defence or someone? Yeah. Basically, it's a silly story. I got up and spoke at that because I just thought it'd be funny to have a slight variation on my name that a friend of mine thinks funny. I thought I'd get up and talk about this. So I got up and talked about this, came off the stage, and Alan Cross goes to me, you need to talk to the ESA. A week later, I'm in front of the ESA talking about the idea of just using this for biodiversity net gain, and now we're just about to put in the funding application. So that's where we've got to over the last year. The opportunities are there, you just got to get yourself out there and try and find them. So yeah, yeah, and we've even come up with a name for it, which is Orbiometrics, and you can't register the domain because I've got them all now. So yeah, and that's just literally, that has come about of a variety of conversations with friends over the last year, people that I work with, just trying to think about how can you use this data, just take that passion for space and the data to get yourself into something. Okay, so.
Have you watched the recent series of Clarkson's Farm?
No.
A lot of people like that, don't they? But there's one episode where they go to Holland and there's sorry.
I watched that one last night.
Did you?
It's just
Yeah, so on Clarkson's Farm, one of the episodes of this year's series, they go over to Holland and there's a farmer over there. Now he's using quadcopters. He could use your information.
Yeah.
It'd be a lot easier. And basically, they're looking at each field, and you can see each field as the crops start to grow,
Yeah.
where there's weaker areas and stronger areas, and you can program the farm machinery to put the fertilizer on in those sorts of scales. So you're not just blanketing the whole lot when it doesn't need it.
Sort of
And that's
thing
basically what you can do. So yeah. So if anybody's interested in watching something that you're talking about, if they go and watch that episode, they'll see what your capabilities
I've
are.
watched that because in the UK, yeah, there are people who are looking, for example, they're not using satellites at the minute, but they're using drones to detect water, where the water goes in agriculture.
Yes.
So I think that is one thing that's worth making, is you don't necessarily have to limit yourself to satellite data, and shouldn't. When you use Earth observation data like we're doing with ground truth data or drone, combining different levels of information, that can really start to broaden the picture of what you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Good.
I'll have watched that episode.
Yeah. You'll appreciate it probably a lot more than anybody else. Thank you.
But it's also worth making the point that, like I said, that's an example within Europe. There's a lot going on in Europe about all this at the minute, and it just seems that the data is now accurate enough. And it's now, this is the right time. If you want to get involved, get involved. Yeah. Any other questions?
It'll be trending after it's appeared on Clarkson's Farm a bit more as well, because we've brought attention to it.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Sure.
Oh, hello.
The stream's running again. So.
But the stream's running. Hi.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, John. John, not Zola. Majewski, and she's going to be talking about, thank you very much, why it's important to have an updated outer space treaty, and 1,000,000 astronaut points to anybody who can tell me when the original version was signed. Oh, well done to you. Yes, 1,000,000 astronaut points.
Damn it.
Damn it, yes. And a big round of applause for Katie. Katie Majewski, thank you.
So, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut when I grew up. Put your hand up if you also wanted to be an astronaut. Yeah, okay, doesn't surprise me. But how wonderful is that? All these aspiring astronauts. Hands up again. Now, keep your hand up if you are now, in fact, an astronaut. Oh, that's really sad. What happened, guys? You with a nice shirt on. Why aren't you an astronaut now? Oh, sorry. Did you? One person didn't have. All right, gentleman with the nice tie on. Why are
I
you?
did go into the aerospace industry,
Mhm.
but no, I didn't progress certain levels. I didn't any flying aeroplanes. I just maintained aeroplanes. So it'd be just
Yeah. Okay. And anyone else? Why didn't you? What happened? What happened? All this ambition to become an astronaut, and none of us are astronauts. I mean, surely statistically somebody must have. No one.
I've heard that you had to learn how to fly a plane.
Oh, I can see that being a bit of a barrier. Yeah, I mean, it never really went out of fashion wanting to be an astronaut. There was a survey done, I think, in 2024 by an educational group called RM, and 57% of children between the age of 4 and 7 still believe they're going to go into space. They still want to be astronauts. So, I mean, we've got a good age range in this room, but it's still a dream that children have. Do you know who has been to space, though? Wow. Now, I think she got absolutely raked over the coals for it. I think it was a bit unfair. She's not a scientist, she's a singer. She's not an explorer, it's her job to entertain, and boy did she entertain with this one. But it was a hen do. It was a hen do. I mean, I just went to the local pub, but if someone said, do you want to go to space for your hen do, I wouldn't say no. But she went as a guest of her mate, Lauren Sanchez, who, as we now know, is married to the 4th richest man in the world. So, you know. But I feel like this is the enshittification of space. The crux of this talk that I'm delivering is to put it to you all that the Outer Space Treaty, signed in 1967, it's not fit for purpose. I mean, that's its full title. I'm not going to read it out. I did try and work out what the abbreviation was, and it's like... So, OST, as it will be referred to henceforth. So this is nearly 60 years ago. And a lot has changed since then. I think when this was signed, there were only 3 countries with satellites in space, and everybody, all actors in space were governments. I mean, you know, Chuck Yeager was still on the scene. They could not possibly have imagined 60 years in the future what we'd be dealing with. So it was great for its time. It was a great endeavour, but it's got to be updated. So just a quick recap for those who didn't spend all last night reading about the Outer Space Treaty. So it was signed by the USA, the UK, and the USSR in 1967. There's a few points in it that really stood out to me. And Article 1, first thing you say, you know, the exploration and use of outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, shall be carried out for the benefit and in the interest of all countries, irrespective of their degree of economic or scientific development, and shall be for the province of mankind. I can't, Katy Perry, province of mankind. you know. But I think we can all agree that this is a noble statement. It still stands. It's still what it should be all about, in my opinion. I won't go through the whole thing line by line, but these were another couple of articles that stood out to me as being quite salient. So, outer space, including the moon and other celestial bodies, is not subject to national appropriation by claim of sovereignty by means of use or occupation or by any other means. It's quite vague, really. Now, remember that word, sovereignty. I'm coming back to it later. And states party to the treaty undertake not to place in orbit around the Earth any objects carrying nuclear weapons or any other weapons of mass destruction, or install weapons on celestial bodies, or put them in space in any other manner. Seems quite, I mean, it's quite a blanket statement. Really. I mean, I get what they're saying. Anyone with, good intentions, don't put weapons in space, is what they're saying here. Again, that's important later on. What these statements don't say is that you can't attach giant robot arms to a satellite and have it drag other satellites out of the way. Some satellites are designed to do this, to clear up space debris. And I'm sure that function will never be used for nefarious purposes. No. They also don't say you can't have you can't have nuclear weapons in space, but it doesn't say you can't have a nuclear-powered spacecraft, which they are in development. Now, when is a nuclear-powered spacecraft not a nuclear-powered spacecraft? When it's a bomb. Doesn't say you can't do that. No shade to Katy Perry and Lauren Sanchez. I'm sure they had a bloody brilliant time. But Bezos isn't known for his humanitarianism. Neither is Elon Musk. But SpaceX launches on average over 100 rockets a year. I think last year they launched 165 rockets. He's the dominant actor in space, like it or not. And he does have he has a deciding say in the company. I don't think he owns quite majority shares, but I've not got a business head, but he's in charge of SpaceX. And the UK is vulnerable because I went to the Space Expo in Glasgow in December, and apparently outside of Houston, I think it even said Glasgow has more satellites in space than anywhere else after Houston, which is incredible. But we can't get them up there. We haven't got a working... Okay, we've got Saxavord in the Shetlands, and we've got Spaceport Cornwall. Neither of those have had a successful launch yet. So if we want to get something in space, we've got a basically called shotgun on a SpaceX rocket, which takes years because everybody else wants to go on that rocket. And what happens to technology in the space of 6 months, never mind the years it takes to get onto a rocket in the first place? And again, we're at the whims of I'm not going to do the salute, but we all know what else he did with his hands. If you put one arm down and turn the hand the other way, that's just wrong. Yeah. So to look up at the stars as a kid, as an adult, whatever, and feel wonder, it's a human thing, and it can't be left up to Bezos, Musk, and Branson, although you don't really hear much from him these days. It just can't be left up to them to dictate the way things go. Now, although it is a legally binding document, the OST 67, no one's actually been prosecuted under it. So it must only be a matter of time before a bad actor takes advantage of its ambiguity. In 2020, NASA awarded contracts to private companies iSpace Japan and iSpace Luxembourg to collect and sell lunar regolith. Who decided it was in NASA's gift to do this? I hark back to the sovereignty point. Who are they to say who can go and collect regolith and then sell it? And the problem with carrying out activities that don't directly go against the treaty, but they don't quite sound legit. They don't really sound quite right. Is it sets a precedent. And I'm not a lawyer, but I think once a precedent gets set, it's harder to walk back from it in future, by which point there might not be any moon left. Not that we can get there, because irresponsible rocket launches have created the Kessler syndrome, while China and the USA duke it out with satellites with giant robot arms. So, and I'm being glib, but at its most mundane, there should be guidance around space debris, resource protection, deorbiting. You all know, I'm sure, the many, many, many things that need to be taken care of in space. States are still acceding to the original 1967 treaty. Malaysia, October last year, Latvia, May last year. So I think that's really promising. It's really positive. It's a sign that people do still regard it as a legitimate, relevant document. I think that should be capitalised on, capitalised with a small c. I don't want my children to think that unless they shack up with a billionaire or join the military, they'll never get to space, literally or figuratively. I had a whole section about the military, but oh my God, I'd be here all day. It's legitimately seen as a theatre for war now. Like the satellites being developed to be hostile towards other satellites, the satellites blinding satellites, that America's got a space force. It's not a space gentle, it's a space force. So I was really surprised when John said about how the lowest amount of spending on EO data is defence. That really surprised me, because I think it's gonna get scary up there. And when I heard about satellites blocking other satellites, it gave me the chills. Like, it genuinely frightened me, and it should frighten all of you. It should frighten us all, because it's all we've got. It's all we've got as humans. We're on this ball of rock, and that's it. And if we let everything above us just become a war zone, that's it. Might as well just give up and go home. We can't go home. We're stuck here, So I've created a petition asking for the government, who, interestingly, we get our own Manc Prime Minister today, coincidentally, asking them to request that the UN urgently review the Outer Space Treaty and bring it up to date. Now, the petition isn't live, that's on me. I thought, you just did it and it went live. It takes 2 weeks. A real human apparently actually looks at it and decides if it's a goer or not. And because I was hoping to have like a link, and I could literally press scan you all now to sign it. But if you please email me, I will send you a link once, and if and when it goes live, please sign it. Even if it doesn't get the traction it needs, it behoves us all to do it. So in December last year, as I said, I was at this SpaceCon Expo in Glasgow, and I was really privileged to hear a speech by this lady. She is Alderman Professor Emma Edham. She is like a hotshot lawyer. She's just incredible. And she said something, and it was early on in the day, and it almost made me feel a bit teary. It really, really stuck with me. And it's that we carry the responsibility for the direction and the longevity of this industry. That's we carry the responsibility for the direction and the longevity of this industry. Make no doubt about it. The people in this room today, it's not yet a saturated industry. You will be instrumental in deciding where it goes. And I hope that anything I've said today resonates with you, and you will please sign my petition and, just keep the next generation excited and enthused about space. So if you want to send me an email, and I've got your email, I don't know if you can see if my head's in the way. And I will send you a link. I won't spam you unless you haven't signed a petition. But no, I won't spam you, I promise. But that's it. Thank you very much for listening.
Got a real microphone now. Any questions? Oh yeah, questions straight away.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your presentation. This is my favorite topic to talk about. I wanted to talk about the Outer Space Treaty and why it can't be enforced right now. Essentially, because it was drafted and signed by the United States, and the United States is the largest donor to the United Nations, it's not in its national interest to continue to restrict what we can do in outer space, because there's so much money in things like the Starlink constellation and taking up so much orbit that it constitutes a claim to sovereignty by that any other means in taking up so much space that nobody else can get up there. And so yeah, it's a very interesting conversation to have, and that updating the Outer Space Treaty at the end of the day requires the Big Five to sign on, which then requires like the US, Russia, and China to agree with each other, which is not a system that's necessarily designed to get anything done. Yes. But yeah, I really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. That was my 2 cents I wanted to add.
On your petition, have you just asked for it to be updated, or have you put a caveat on that it needs looking at every 5 to 10 years?
No, you get very little space.
Okay.
500 characters,
Got
not
you.
even words, characters.
Yes.
So I had to be very economical. I just had to say, I want this government to petition the UN. So yeah, I couldn't be as detailed as I wanted
No,
to be.
that's fine. I
on
suppose
there.
if it does gain traction, hopefully
Yeah.
it will gain traction. And if it
That'd be
doesn't
amazing.
gain traction, then, but I think it's worthwhile having it looked at,
Absolutely.
whether it's 5 years or 10 years or
Absolutely.
whatever.
And I think there's other forums that do meet regularly. And that's why I think there is an appetite for that. I know, like, you follow the money, don't you? It's just unfortunate, but I think there is appetite in the world for this. Just needs one of the states needs to go to the UN to request an amendment to this particular treaty. And there's academics online who've written about why this needs to be done, and they didn't manage to do it. I'm not expecting I will manage to do it. But what else can you do? You can't just
You've done your
be
bit.
angry about it.
You've done your bit.
So,
You've tried.
done my bit.
Well done. Well done,
Thank
Katie. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions? Fabulous, thank you, Katie.
Thank you.